The National Desk, America's News Now.
Talking to one of the city workers here, and all of a sudden we heard a little explosion back over by the intersection, and turns out power just blew up.
Beryl leaves millions in the dark in Texas as it now travels deeper inside the United States, where it's headed next. A defiant President Biden rebukes his own party. Hear what he had to say about calls for him to drop out of the race before he is nominated. Then an alarming report concerning girls and women. Just how safe are common menstruation products being sold at retail stores across the country? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now we are tracking Tropical Storm Beryl as it makes its way out of Texas, headed right now northeast towards Ohio. And this morning, Beryl made landfall about 100 miles southwest of Houston as a Category 1 hurricane. There has been at least 2 deaths reported, killed by falling trees. Heavy flooding has hit the Houston area, and that has received more than 7 inches of rain today. And across the state, more than 2.7 million customers now without power, according to PowerOutage.com. The National Desk's Amanda Henderson is in Palacios, Texas, as the community there begins to assess the damage.
Beryl's story is told by what you can see out here in Palacios, and that includes trees as well as tree branches that were snapped in half. And you can tell that some of these piles are just as tall, if not taller than me. And for reference, I'm 5'2". But the story out here in Palacios is also told by what you can't see, and that's the down power lines that were snapped in half like toothpicks. People without power today saying that they feel fortunate the damage wasn't worse.
The mileage wasn't as high as one a few years back that we rode out. And but this one was real high. It seems like the winds were higher than what they were.
Longoria says as soon as it was safe, he rushed to see how his business had fared. Thankful, the only repair will be waiting for power to come back.
Through these types of things, you don't know. I mean, anything can happen. And the expectations, I mean, I've seen devastation for, and this. I turned the corner here and I said, okay, everything's in place.
Palacios is one of several cities experiencing power outages, and at last check, they still had some in effect. Reporting in Palacios, I'm Amanda Henderson.
On top of power outages, Beryl is wreaking havoc on flights around the country. More than 4,400 flights tonight have been delayed into or out of the United States. Then we have over 1,600 flights that have been canceled. That's including almost 80% of all of the flights in or out of Houston. These disruptions could continue as Tropical Storm Beryl continues to make its way north. Over the next few days, Beryl is expected to lose strength as it passes over land, but it will remain a tropical depression tomorrow as it hovers over the middle of Arkansas, headed northeast to southern Missouri. By Wednesday, Beryl should be in the middle of Indiana, possibly as a post-tropical depression, but still bringing lots of rain and sustained winds of up to 39 miles an hour. And tonight, President Joe Biden calling out members of his own party who think he should step down as the Democratic nominee for president. In a phone interview on MSNBC this morning, President Biden said he will not drop out and he has the support of the voters. He said the elites in the party will have to, quote, challenge me at the convention.
All the data shows that the average Democrat out there who voted, 14 million of them that voted for me, still want me to be the nominee. The bottom line here is that we're not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I wouldn't be running if I didn't absolutely believe that I am the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2024.
In a meeting yesterday, several House Democratic lawmakers spoke to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, saying Biden needed to drop out of the race. There was concern his interview on Friday night with ABC's George Stephanopoulos didn't do enough to repair his image from the debate. However, other Democratic leaders still believe Biden is the best shot to beat Donald Trump, as he has already done so in 2020. For the first time in 40 years, the National Republican Committee may remove a call for a national abortion ban from their official platform. According to anonymous sources, the Associated Press says the party's priorities will align with former President Donald Trump's vision of allowing each state to set their own abortion limits. The RNC began meeting today with a week to work on their entire platform that will be unveiled at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee next Monday. An armed person is in custody in California after triggering evacuations and shelter-in-place orders in a Sacramento neighborhood this morning. That's according to police. Officers set up a perimeter after getting reports of someone with a gun. A SWAT team and crisis negotiators arrived at the scene, and after a few hours, they were able to make the arrest. Meantime, Chicago residents left devastated, mourning the deaths of 19 people killed in shootings there over the 4th of July weekend. Over 100 people shot in the city from Thursday until Sunday. Police have not given details about the arrests in any of those shootings, but Chicago's mayor saying today he's heartbroken.
These are 19 families whose lives are forever altered, and 19 families who woke up this morning without a son, without a daughter, without a mother, without a father, without an aunt, without an uncle. Over 100 people whose lives will never be the same.
Other cities also saw elevated gun violence recently. Authorities say 3 men were shot and killed near a homeless encampment in Southern California this weekend. And police are looking for a male suspect in a shooting that injured 2 boys in a McDonald's in the Bronx on Saturday. Boeing has accepted a plea deal from the Justice Department, avoiding a criminal trial for 2 deadly crashes of its 737 MAX jets. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
The airline manufacturer and the DOJ striking a deal. Boeing pleading guilty to 1 felony charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Prosecutors alleging 2 Boeing pilots concealed key information from the FAA during their investigations. The case involves 2 deadly crashes of Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft that killed a combined 346 people. Lion Air Flight 610 nosedived into the Java Sea off the coast of Indonesia in October of 2018.
An accident that was not only preventable, but was the result of a pattern of deliberate concealment.
Less than 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed shortly after takeoff from the Ethiopian capital. As part of the plea deal, Boeing faces nearly $250 million in an additional fine. They also will have to invest at least another $455 million into compliance and safety programs. And for the next 3 years, the company will have to operate under the oversight of an independent monitor. Sinclair's WCIV spoke with one Boeing whistleblower.
If Boeing really changed, things would have been different after the two-place crash.
The problems persisted. In January, a door flew off an Alaska Airlines plane mid-flight. In March, a wheel fell off a United Airlines jet. Last month, senators called Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun to Capitol Hill for answers.
You're cutting corners. You are eliminating safety procedures. For the American people, they're in danger.
I don't recognize any of the Boeing you described.
You don't recognize the Boeing that has airplanes falling out of the sky?
And Amira, this plea deal between Boeing and the Justice Department requires approval by a federal judge before it can take effect. But the families of those who died in those 2 crashes are calling this a sweetheart deal, urging the judge to reject it.
And Kayla, such a tricky situation given the relationship between Boeing and the government. We know they do a lot of business with each other. So if this deal does get approved by a federal judge, do we expect it to impact that relationship?
So Boeing did avoid the massive penalty of losing the right to conduct business with the U.S. government. But if this deal is accepted, it would complicate the relationship because the charge Boeing is pleading guilty to, it's a felony. However, the company can seek waivers to continue working with the U.S. government, and we assume those waivers will be approved. The U.S. is an important client. About 37% of Boeing's business last year came from U.S. government contracts. Amira.
All right, Kayla Gaskins reporting for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you, as always. And closing arguments officially underway right now in the corruption trial of Senator Robert Menendez. Jurors have heard nearly 2 months of testimony at this point. Federal prosecutors claim the New Jersey Democrat accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes to help Egypt secure billions of dollars in U.S. military assistance. The senator has said he is not guilty and punted at least some of the blame to his wife, Nadine, who's set to stand trial next. Coming up, tens of millions of people under heat alerts as soaring temperatures break records. The areas at highest risk. Then why job scams are becoming more of a threat and what to do to avoid falling for them. And later, federal agents stop shipments of fake medication and merchandise around the clock. We're going to look at some of the most common counterfeits that they have found right after the break. In addition to a hurricane, we got 146 million Americans under heat alerts today with warnings on both coasts right now. In the southeast and mid-Atlantic region, heat advisories have been in effect all day, while on the west coast, excessive heat warnings remaining active from Washington to Arizona, with much of the coast over 100 degrees, if you can believe it. Authorities in Oregon's Multnomah County say they are investigating 4 suspected heat-related deaths over the weekend. Officials say 1 death was reported on Friday, 1 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Portland broke daily record temperatures all 3 of those days and is currently over 100 degrees right now. The county medical examiner says it will take weeks or months to confirm the causes of death. A search and rescue mission underway near the Tahoe National Forest in Northern California. 13 hikers are stranded in a wildfire zone. Their vehicles were found abandoned yesterday. They were located by a helicopter, this helicopter in the morning, and now a rescue team has been inserted to assist from out of the forest. The fire, known as the Royal Fire, has already consumed about 170 acres and it is 0% contained. Mortgage rates could be sliding. A new report from Credible showing the average rate on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage today is 6.63%. Now that is much lower than where we were last week when it was 6.99%. But other sources say rates are increasing. Bankrate reports the average rate is 7.08 today, up from 7% a week ago. Job scams are up 118% in 2023 as compared to 2022, and that's according to a new report by the Identity Theft Resource Center. While not the most common scam, making up only 9% of identity fraud, the ITRC called it an emerging threat that is becoming more popular because AI can make the pitches used more believable. The FTC now reporting that job and business scams cost consumers $367 million in 2022. And individuals, they lost about $2,000 apiece. The FTC suggests that you always confirm the company exists before replying to any recruiter. Air travel has reached a new record with over 3 million people passing through the U.S. airport security yesterday, the first time that's happened, according to TSA. Out of the top 10 busiest days since TSA was created in 2001, most have happened this year. It comes as costs for plane tickets and hotels are lower than they were a year ago. Momentum is growing to end legacy admissions at college campuses following the Supreme Court decision to strike down race-based admissions. The National Desk's Angela Brown is looking at changes at the state level.
The call to end legacy admissions for colleges and universities is growing louder. The White House taking this stand.
Legacy admissions hold back our ability to build diverse student bodies.
Our research indicates 3 states have banned legacy admissions, which gives preference to children of alumni. Colorado, the first state in 2021. Virginia, the second this spring, followed by Maryland. Civil rights groups like the NAACP have called for the end of legacy admissions after the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college admissions.
If the program to repair the harm that was done by institutions and this government for centuries called affirmative action has now come under attack and are being abolished, we need to do all away with all preferential programs such as legacy programs.
This report from Education Reform Now found that 28% of public and private not-for-profit four-year colleges in the U.S. consider legacy status in their admissions process. That number is down, a move that could financially hurt some universities who rely on alumni for donations and expect their kids to get in. Nicole Neely, Parents Defending Education.
Do you see this maybe spreading to more college campuses?
I think it will start to spread. Although, universities are also balancing that pressure of, okay, well, the legacy admits are sometimes the ones that make the very, very big 6, 7, 8, 9-figure gifts. And so, this will, for some colleges, be a business decision at the end of the day.
The majority of the most selective colleges continue to consider legacy status, around 58%, but that number is down significantly. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
All right, Angela, thank you. And right now, top U.S. officials, including the CIA chief, on the ground in Cairo for ceasefire talks as negotiations hit some shaky ground. Israeli forces are now pushing deeper into Gaza City, where they initially said their operation had concluded, but have since returned to pursue what they say are Hamas militants who have regrouped there. The renewed military presence sending thousands of Palestinians sheltering to flee. Hamas warned today that the latest raids and displacement in Gaza City could lead to the collapse of the long-running negotiations. The warning following days of momentum around a deal between Israel and Hamas. Last week, it appeared the two sides were poised for a breakthrough. But the fate of this week's ongoing negotiations not carrying the same optimism. Meanwhile, in the ongoing war in Ukraine, a children's hospital in Kyiv was one of the buildings hit in a major Russian missile attack. Officials say at least 36 people are dead and nearly 130 people hurt. Crews are looking for more people in the rubble. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the missile attacks also damaged apartment buildings and public infrastructure. Russia's defense ministry says the strikes were aimed at defense plants and military air bases, not civilian buildings. Some unsettling news for the more than 43 million girls and women in the U.S. who use tampons. Tonight, we are learning more about a study that has come out showing more than a dozen metals, including lead and arsenic, have showed up in a broad array of tampons sold across the United States, raising major concerns over the widely used menstruation product. To be clear, the findings did not cite the brands tested, but we do know that tests that were done in 30 different tampons across 14 different brands, they showed that the arsenic and lead were both in there amongst more than a dozen other chemicals, and these are top brands sold at major online and in-store retailers. Researchers say they cannot yet assess to what extent metals in tampons contribute to any health problems at the moment, so they're going to continue to do more research. The man on trial for the murder of a beloved Detroit Jewish leader was back in court today for cross-examination. Michael Jackson Bolanos, accused of killing Samantha Wall, pictured there on the screen. She was found stabbed in front of her home last October. Police believe Bolanos killed Wall during an attempted home invasion. Bolanos testified that he was in the area looking to steal from some cars, but just happened to discover Wall's body and that he is a victim of bad circumstance. Before Bolanos was charged, police were investigating Wall's ex-boyfriend, who confessed to killing Wall before then retracting the confession, saying he was in the midst of a psychotic break. A new study on diet and cancer has hopeful news for those living with cancer right now. Medical reporter Liz Bonus sharing why it may encourage you to change what's on your menu.
Hey there, hello to you. The Mediterranean diet has now been associated with a lower risk for death in cancer survivors. But there's a catch in this. It appears the diet helps survivors fight off other illnesses, not just cancer, that can influence lifespan.
For months now, we've been following the story of cancer survivor Santrina Fletcher. She's a nurse practitioner at Kentucky's Derma Lounge, who months ago, after a mammogram and ultrasound, had a request from her provider to come back for follow-up.
They wanted me to come back for the biopsy, and that's when they discovered that I did in fact have breast cancer.
As a nurse practitioner, Santrina knew getting traditional therapy was important, but she also says she feels
you have to actually do other things besides take the pill to cure yourself.
And so along with taking nutrition courses, Santrina has started eating the Mediterranean way.
I always bring the best and best and best.
Fari Ozdale, the owner and chef at Ohio's Cafe Mediterranean, says the diet shifts the plate from the traditional Western way of eating to more plant foods, less red meat, and the real secret?
The most important ingredient and my 99% olive oil comes from Mediterranean, one of the Mediterranean country, and it makes huge difference.
So much so that this study found those living with cancer who choose to eat this way have lower death rates from all causes, especially heart disease. As part of the study, researchers reviewed more than 800 patients, both men and women living with cancer. They found the higher the score for eating the Mediterranean way, the lower the risk of dying from any cause during a 13-year follow-up. Well, those deaths weren't specifically linked to a lower death rate from the cancer itself. Santrina says it's still important information for those living with this illness to know.
You know what? I'm going to fight this with everything I have, and I'm going to win this battle, and I want to teach other people how to do it.
Well, coming up, a safety warning from forecasters as extreme heat in the West is threatening the lives of people and animals. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
At any given point, any given day, you can see anything imaginable coming into the country.
Chief Supervisor Eric Zizelman walks us through this site in the port of Cincinnati as his team uncovers box after box of knockoff drugs and merchandise.
We have fillers, we have Botox.
We saw everything from counterfeit cosmetic drugs to birth control.
Mirena is birth control. This is quite concerning. You have no idea how this was produced.
Officers even uncovering the trendy weight loss drug, a knockoff of Ozempic.
Where is that money really going, and who are you potentially hurting?
That's what these CBP officers are trying to uncover. But their main goal, Zizelman says, is keeping you safe.
Sizzling temperatures seem to be hanging around endlessly. With no significant relief anytime soon, people and animals need to be staying out of the sun.
It'd be a good idea to stay indoors and to stay in air-conditioned buildings as well.
And if you have to go anywhere, make sure you're not leaving your pets or kids in a hot car. James Ellenberger from Clovis Police Department says Saturday around noon, a woman left her 2 dogs in a car while grocery shopping at Winco. She did leave her window slightly cracked and a bowl of ice water, but with temperatures like these, it's dangerous.
There's no moving air and the temperature is completely rising.
Clovis police say the inside of the car was 107. The woman was given 2 citations.
He's taken full responsibility. He'll pay full restitution.
That's the attorney for former purchasing director Tracy Murnane. Murnane is expected to be the 3rd executive to plead guilty in the scandal that rocked zoo leadership. It all came to light in 2021. The zoo's executive director, Tom Stoff, and 3 others accused of using zoo money for tickets to sports and concerts, golf memberships, even an RV for Stoff's personal use, all to the tune of more than $2 million.
You can't rip off donors like this, and they need to be held to account.
Johns Hopkins Medical School will be free for most students starting this fall, all thanks to a $1 billion donation from Bloomberg Philanthropies. It'll apply to medical students whose families earn less than $300,000, with the gift also covering living expenses for families earning up to $175,000. The gift aims to boost the shortage of doctors, as the American Medical Association projects a physician shortfall of at least 37,000 and possibly 100,000 over the next decade. Michael Bloomberg said today that the high cost of medical schooling too often bars students from enrolling, and he's hoping this will help. I'm sure those students will be very pleased. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.